computer.
Hi, Sandy Cotter here. I'm on my website wanting to talk about a PESO structure that I did with a colleague, Deborah Clarke. And Deborah's going to talk a bit about what happened to her in the structure and what she's taken away from it, and hopefully is using it in her life. So over to you, Deb.
Thank you, Sandy. They were, you'd actually managed to do 2 structures with me relatively recently, and I've been reflecting on both those, and also the structures, the work itself. I've been re-listening to something that Al said about it. This work really isn't about fixing you, but enabling you to, he had a wonderful way with words, didn't he? Continue the endless unfolding of self. And I trained with Al, and I've heard him say that, but I think I'm beginning to understand how bits of my identity, which I previously thought were me, I've now, through this work, began to see they're bits of behavior that I might have adapted to get through things. And there's another, like opening a door into another bit of me that's, oh, hello, this is another bit of me. Welcome home.
And that would be in classical psychology, that would be you're identifying your defenses, not as a part of who you are, but as a part of how you cope with the world.
Yeah.
And while coping with the world is always a good thing, it's a limited thing.
Exactly.
So if we can get beyond our coping strategy, then we live more fully our life.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I know that's what the work does. But I was thinking in terms of how these particular work that you did with me fits into that. And the structure you did a few weeks ago, I don't know if you remember, but what came up was an incident where I witnessed some sexual abuse as a child. And even saying it now, though I've done lots of work on it, still brings up but what the antidote gave me was, well, through the work, was actually discovering I looked at it as kind of protective energy, my anger, or my feminine, I think we'd sort of said that feminine energy that comes up and protects, whatever we want to call it. And I'm sure you'll make it clear after I finish speaking. But in the antidote, I suddenly went from what happened at the time, which was I kind of went into freeze mode and complied, and also then didn't tell anyone and actually forgot about it till I was in my 40s, to in my antidote, I was envisaging igniting, not freezing, but either running away or even fighting, by which I mean confronting and not allowing it to happen. And that's what I mean. I thought I was always someone who was just gonna avoid confrontation and liked harmony. So to actually discover that there was a natural sense of my protection, my energy, that I could fight my own battles. I really feel that sense of how I could have been came through very strongly to protect myself all of the years, and how I can be now, which is not anything for a quiet life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a beautiful description there. And if I try to put a little bit of science around that, in our autonomic nervous system, we have 3 responses to danger. Fight and flight are mobilizations of our system, and it's the most wholesome response. I either run away from it or I fight it, depending on what I assess. But a deeper one, when the shock or the trauma feels overwhelming, then we freeze. And that's, as a little girl, watching an abuse happen that you didn't entirely understand, but felt the violent energy to it. You froze. And that became an unconscious habit. And so you said anything for a quiet life, anything to avoid the danger. So you coped with that until you were 40, you're successful and all kinds of things like that, but a part of you remained inaccessible. So in that antidote, We created a situation of an ideal figure that would support and encourage another kind of reaction to that situation. And what came up in you organically from your body, you were like a wonderful snarling lioness.
Yeah. And
And
it's just
even
the energy now, you know, and it's like, oh, hello, that is me. Wow, I thought that was like other people were like that, and I just wasn't like that. But no, that actually is me.
And I remember in the session, you enjoyed that.
Yeah.
You enjoyed her, the lioness's ability to snarl and be dangerous and be protective perhaps of your friend and also self-protective.
Yeah.
So mobilizing that energy and having it there available to you in your life makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
We call it what happens psychologically when someone freezes and then forgets, as you say. We call that in psychology dissociation. And it's a frequent response to trauma because the organism feels overwhelmed. I can't handle this. I just have to really, I have to be still and be ready to die. So it's an overwhelming threat. And when we upgraded that to unfreezing and you feeling this more potent aspect, which would be to run away if that's the best assessment, or as you totally enjoyed, to be able to fight and stand your ground. And in the PESO method, as we build on that alternative wiring, that alternative memory, where you could have stood up and mobilized your fierceness, that will have an effect on how you live your life with others in the world.
Yeah.
So you will not sacrifice your vitality for a quiet life. You may even be quite noisy in life.
Yeah.
To promote what you feel is the expression of yourself.
Yeah. And it was just wonderful to be able to sort of think about that and see it and feel it. And I'm going to give you another little piece that I got from it, because that night I was obviously processing this new memory, my new wiring in my, and I woke up in the morning and I was really thinking about the antidote of these parents, ideal parents that you put there. And I actually imagined going back to them and actually telling them what happened. And what's really interesting is I've done a lot of work on this and I've been in therapy, and you're right, I did dissociate. So I've understood that all cognitively, but still there was a little bit of emotional experience truth that I hadn't really felt. And I imagined what came to me, it was early morning, I wasn't really that awake, but I was awake enough. And I imagined talking to these ideal parents, what had happened to me. So what I didn't do at the time, which was tell anyone, I actually imagined telling them. And that was out of the structure, but still in the frame of the structure, processing through. And I woke up with tears on my face. And such sadness and just profound actually feeling of being able to have had that experience processed and resolved, and what it would have felt like to have had that done at the time. Complete opposite to actually what I did do, which would bury it.
So in PESO, you will know this, but I will say it for our conversation, that there's a very deep resolution of present and past. And that's when the witness says, I see how relieved you feel as you experience this possibility. That would have been the antidote, because you did continue to work in your imagination after the structure ended. I see how relieved you feel at this new possibility and what grief you feel when you remember how it was. Because that's a terrible thing to happen to a child. It's the end of innocence.
Yeah,
and that's a tragedy.
It was. And I can, I still feel that now, but I had that relief. And I would talk about the click of closure, that genetically experience that's more fitting than the one I experienced, which was a tragedy. The genetically fitting one brings about that final click of closure on it.
And what's very important in this work is that we can change the memories of the past. So by installing ideal or better memory alongside the traumatic memory, then with dedication, which you certainly showed, with dedication and nurturing, that memory can be a new basis from which to live life. So what I like about the PESO method is the dignity of classic therapy is we face our losses and we grieve them. And there's a great deal of dignity and healing in that. What I like about the PESO method is we do that. That's what the relief grief process is. And we add in something new. And this was a genius of PESO, to add in that new memory so that with cultivation and dedication, that can provide a new basis from which to live the life, which is less coping, way less coping, and more true, authentic expression. So thank you for that, that sharing. You clearly went on with the method once you left the structure, because the imagination never ends. And you know the system well enough to be able to contain that and use it well for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sandy.
Pleasure, my pleasure.